Yeah, now we've got a bad one here. I think this is one of the worst stories I've ever read about the, essentially, Afghans who helped the Brits when we were in that country fighting. We've leaked their names. It's not just a dozen people, which is what you expect with these stories. It's 100,000 names and addresses. And not only that, then the government said, oh, the best way of dealing with this is not to tell anyone. This is the last government. Cover up after leak risked lives of 100,000 Afghans. Love to know who was the defense secretary when this happened. They then have to spend money essentially getting them all back to Britain for their safety. And that cost, here's the Telegraph, £7 billion for what they call the Afghan migrant cover-up. So this is February 2022. The personal details of nearly 19,000 people who'd applied to move to the UK after the Taliban seized power were leaked. It endangered as many as 100,000 people in total, because that's obviously their families and their parents and so on. The previous government learnt of the breach in August 2023 because they started seeing details on Facebook. A new resettlement scheme for those on the leaked list was set up and has seen 4,500 Afghans arrive in the UK so far. The UK only informed those affected Tuesday of this week. 3.5 years after the data was compromised, the secret scheme, officially called the Afghan relocation route, has cost £400 million so far and is expected to cost a further 450 million. At one time, up to 7 billion of taxpayers' money was earmarked to deal with it. And then, Wilfred, they had a big, what's called a super injunction, so nobody could talk about it.
The first thing I want to know, as you said, who was the minister in charge?
Ben Wallace, I believe.
Who was it?
Ben Wallace.
And he's
probably working in the defence industry now.
Somebody has to really answer for this, because people's lives are put at risk. That's the first thing. But then the extraordinary potential cost of all of this.
Yeah.
And I really do think that people need to sort of stand up and justify, and then the person that leaked this, what has happened? Has that person that leaked this been answered?
The great irony is we haven't been told, and it's quite possible that people just call it, that's John in the office, or he's the one who,
well,
7 billion.
2 secs. The soldier responsible for the leak was operating under the command of General Sir Gwyn Jenkins, who's now head of the Navy.
Oh, OK.
Keir Starmer says he still has faith in his head of the Navy. I think the bigger concern is, and certainly the one that Mr. Justice Chamberlain, who is the judge presiding over this super injunction, who's the one that's decided to lift it finally, the bigger concern is the impact on freedom of speech and, in fact, whether it was counterproductive. To be clear, it's not just an injunction that stopped these names leaking out into the press and beyond and getting into the hands of the Taliban. Yeah. We weren't even allowed to know of the injunction's existence, which is why it's like a super injunction. And he said of it, it left a scrutiny vacuum. Handing down his judgment, he added, the gagging order had the effect of, quote, completely shutting down the ordinary mechanisms of accountability which operate in a democracy. Bearing in mind this all happens before an election, there's also documentation that says the politicians concerned were concerned regarding political credibility.
Well, I wonder whether that's why Ben Wallace suddenly sort of stepped down and then left politics. We can hear what John Healey, the current Defence Secretary, had to say, speaking to the Commons yesterday.
Mr. Speaker, this serious data incident should never have happened. It may have occurred 3 years ago under the previous government, but to all those whose information was compromised, I offer a sincere apology today on behalf of the British government. And I trust the Shadow Defence Secretary, as a former Defence Minister, will join me in this.
Whoa. Well, so here's the Mail headline. Ministers still won't come clean on the secret Afghan airlifts. There we go. The Guardian, thousands of Afghans relocated. Oh, I love that. In secret scheme after data leak.
There is also, just quickly,
sorry, Tessa,
in the small
in the
print,
iPaper, UK offers asylum to 24,000 Afghans after email blunder and cover-up cost billions. Sorry, Tessa.
I'm just obsessed with the super injunction. It may have made matters worse by increasing the value of the database to the Taliban. It's appalling, really. We went into an election not having full information about something that's costing up to $7 billion. That's nearly half of Rachel Reeves's platform.
Yeah, it can't cost that much. But in the end, maybe we should have been open to them coming here because they were in danger because they work for us. So maybe we've got to the right end point here. But someone rang my radio show the other day saying, why don't we go back to post-it notes? But seriously, if this is what computers do, what's the point?
I know.
This is more damaging than the worst of the Cambridge 5 spy ring.
Yeah.
We can't even blame the Russians on this occasion.
No,
it's totally
we're
okay.
hacking ourselves now. Yeah.
The thing that I've learnt from this is that, is it reasonable that one person, either minister, has all that power? Should be there some form of committee to actually decide whether this injunction should be allowed?
Yeah, well, there is in the House of Commons the Intelligence Select Committee. Their hearings usually are private. They can keep secrets. They should have been allowed to know about this.
They didn't know about this either?
No!
That is what is absolutely
mad.
unacceptable.
It's darker than that.
Yeah.
Speakers in both houses were notified so that if it ever came up as a topic, it was battered away.